Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel with Edible Outdoors. Welcome to our class, Deer Butchering and Venison Chef Demo. Edible Outdoors is an organization. We have classes in hunting, fishing, and foraging. And the purpose really is to get people together, to get people outside, and to understand that there is food everywhere. We are doing this class in collaboration with the Iowa chapter of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, or BHA. If you are not familiar with them, you should check them out. It's a really great organization. It's a national organization, and there's also chapters in Canada. And they seek to ensure North America's outdoor heritage of hunting and fishing through education and work on behalf of wild public lands and waters. It's a really great conservation organization.
My name is Max McDaniel. I'm with the Iowa Board of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Specifically, I do R3, which stands for Hunter Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation. And as a part of that, our chapter puts on a lot of events such as this that are aimed at bringing in new hunters and reactivating folks who may have gone hunting in the past or had some experience with it, but aren't totally at the point where they're ready to dive totally in to hunting. So that is my role with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and I'll let Chris explain what he does with our organization.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Ford. I am the Iowa chapter treasurer, born and raised in southeast Iowa. Been hunting deer since I was 12 years old, butchering basically every deer that I've ever shot, so I'm going to be Max's right-hand man for the day, and we'll take you on a wonderful journey of skinning this beautiful deer.
All right, everybody, so one of the things that we're going to really emphasize today is the fact that although butchering a whitetail can seem a little bit intimidating, it really is a rewarding process. It helps you get more connected with your meat. It allows you to cut the meat how you want, and also it saves you time, turnaround time from sending something to a butcher, and it saves you a good bit of money. So we've got a whitetail here that was shot last week. So it's been already field dressed, and for anyone who hasn't, there's that video that was posted that you can see how to field dress a whitetail. So I recommend checking that out. But so now we're at the next step here. And so as you can see, we've got this whitetail hanging right now from this device here, which is called a gambrel. You can hang whitetails really two different ways, either with the legs up or the head up. I personally have always done it with the legs up, so that's the method that we are going to demonstrate today. And the first step we're going to do here is getting this skin off. Now, typically what you want to do after you shoot a deer and get it back home or wherever you're going to be doing your butchering is get that skin off. The longer a deer hangs, especially in colder weather, the tougher that skin is going to be to get off. It just, it gets stiff, it attaches to the meat a little bit more. But we're going to get the skin off of this guy. Obviously, we left it on for the purposes of demonstration today, so we're going to get started on that. And right off the bat, you want to make a couple of cuts here. We'll start up here at the back legs, and then we'll go down to this joint right here on the front legs. It's kind of their ankle, I think, is technically what it is. There's two joints down here, so we'll start up here, and you want to be careful. Here we'll kind of show you've got this tendon here. If you're hanging it by the back legs, this tendon here is pretty crucial to keep intact. So you just want to be a little bit careful cutting there so you don't slice through the tendon. So we'll start here and go around this guy. And again, here you're just cutting through the skin. You're not really getting into any meat or anything like that. And you want to be a little bit careful around this back tendon. get that guy opened up. And then you repeat the process here on the other side. So again, we're going around your tendon and the bottom part of the shank. And it can be a little tough to see, right off the bat whether you've gotten through. You still have a lot of hair and stuff there, but you'll be able to tell when you start to pull on that hide. There, you got that freed up a little bit. All right, so now we got this freed up a little bit on top here. Now we're going to go down to these front legs. And again, right here, you can feel this joint. And you want to go right for the middle of it, kind of where the knuckle, for lack of a better term, is. And you can always do a little bit of work to loosen up that deer, especially when it's cold like this and this deer's been hanging a while. Loosen that joint up just a bit. And eventually what we're going to do down here is pop the leg off right at this joint. So this will be this lower leg portion will be coming off of this deer in order to really pull the hide off. So again, going around like that, and you can see right in there is where your joint's at, and you can, just for demonstration purposes, cut open into it a little bit. We should be.
In this part, you don't have to worry about getting too deep there. We're going to break those off anyway. That's no problem getting too deep there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of no harm, no foul there. You're not going to, don't worry about messing any of that stuff up, especially on that front leg. Here, only thing you're really worried about is cutting through that tendon back here.
And again, that tendon's just because we have it hanging by its tendon. If you're doing it from the neck, it wouldn't matter.
All right, so it looks like we've got it freed up here a little bit. You just kind of pull that away just a tad. And now what we're going to do is go up the insides of the back leg and meet your opening here. I like to cut with the grain there so you're not pulling hair into the meat. If you go outside in, at least in my experience, I pull more hair into the meat. So I'll start on the inside of this back leg here. See if we can get a little separation. Again, this is one of the reasons why you want to do this while this deer is still kind of fresh, that you can pull the hide a little bit more. You got a little bit more play in it. Whereas, if it's been resting for a while, it can be a little bit more difficult to create separation. So as you can see here, I'm using my hands quite a bit to open this up. One of the things butchering deer is you actually use your hands a lot more than what you would think. There is a decent bit of knife work, but a lot of it on big game animals, ungulates like this, the skin and the meat will kind of take you where you need to go, and we'll demonstrate that a little bit more when we're breaking down one of the back legs. So here, go up we'll be able to demo it a little bit better on this leg. I think we'll have a better angle. But again, you're going up the inside here, and you're gonna meet your cut there at the bottom of the shank. So again, going up the inside of the back leg here.
And as you can see, a very sharp knife is critical to the whole process.
And you're just going right in between the the skin and the meat, trying to do your best to avoid puncturing into any of those muscle groups. If you do, it's not a huge deal. One thing that I would tell people that are just starting out butchering a deer is don't be afraid to make a miscut. And by what I mean there is, if you don't make a great cut on something, it's not like the meat is lost. You might just have something that would normally be steak, maybe turn into a little bit more burger. So, and I think Chris can attest to this, every time you butcher a deer, you seem to get better at it, and so it's a continuous learning process. And I know Rachel referenced some YouTube videos and things like that. So it's a continuous learning process, and every time that you do it, you learn something a little bit more, maybe a new trick or a method that helps you the next time. So it's a continuous learning process here. So now that we're opened up here on the insides of the back leg, we're going to just do a little bit of knife work. Normally when you'd have a deer that's been recently shot, you can really just pull this away with your hands. You really don't even need a knife. Because this deer has been hanging for a while, we're going to have to do a little bit more knife work on him. But here you can see you've just got this membrane in between the hide and the meat, and you're just pulling that away. Then you're coming around the back side here. You've got, again, we're going to basically work it back and just open things up a little bit. What will happen here once we create some separation and give ourselves a good surface to pull, Chris and I are going to literally pull the hide off of this, which hopefully on this cold deer will still work out just fine. So I think a question's been posed about aging deer. And now aging, I've talked to some butchers before who said they won't even touch a deer unless it's been hanging for 5 days. And the temperature that I look for personally if I'm going to age a deer is daytime highs right in the kind of low 40s, with it obviously cooling overnight. You can, if you don't have like an aging freezer or a walk-in cooler or something like that, you can age deer in your garage if the temperatures and conditions are going to allow for it. Now, it also kind of depends, right? If you're going to turn an entire deer into mostly ground and maybe some sausages or things like that, the aging process it isn't as big of a deal. It's more for your primary cuts that you're worried about the aging. So that would be my 2 cents on it. Now, there are a lot of good resources that you can look up, for dry aging or wet aging. There are a lot of different processes, and I mean, that's just a topic that we could talk about for a good long time. But hopefully that's at least a preliminary discussion that can kind of answer that question. And the aging process will give you a little bit more tender product. Obviously, commercial like beef and things like that, that's all aged. So it's definitely something to mess around with. However, if you shoot a deer October 1st and you just don't have the equipment, I personally wouldn't lose sleep over it. That being said, if you have like an extra fridge or something in the garage, you can really focus in on those primary muscle groups, which are mostly going to be on your back leg here. So as I was talking, Chris got this back leg over here freed up a little bit, and I think we're just about ready for the pull here. So we're going to just do a little bit more work getting this guy. And here you're trying to get good separation from the hide and the meat. You don't want to have too much connectivity there, because then what can happen is you won't get a good clean pull. So hopefully we've got ourselves where we need to be. And now here, try and spin this guy around a little bit so you can get a better look. You got the tail here, and the tail, for the purposes of pulling here, you're going to want to cut through your tailbone so that is freed up, and you can use that to help get some leverage when you're pulling. So see if we can find the base of it here, kind of get some of the remnant out of the way there. And again, a lot of these cuts will be a little bit easier when the deer is fresh and hasn't kind of gone through the whole rigor process. We should have that guy broken right there. Yep, got the separation, and now should be able to get a good pull going up this guy. Chris, should we run up the front legs before we give him a pull? Yep. So now another thing that I find personally a little bit easier if you do this first in the process is you're going up the inside of these front legs here. So again, you're skinning up that front leg, and you're kind of bringing it up into the armpit area. And this right here is an area that between kind of the armpit and the neck can be an area where a little bit of difficulty can come in. So what I found that personally works for me is if I take this cut that comes up from the shank and I go basically kind of cut a V into this brisket area. And that, in my personal experience, kind of allows for a little bit cleaner pull, because what will happen is once we pull this hide here, things will just start to get bunched up kind of around the neck and shoulders area. And this, doing a little bit of work right here, in my opinion, has saved me a little bit of hassle. So now we're going to go up the inside of the other front leg. Again, you're just working.
This is going to save you a little time. Once you get all of this fur and hair, everything pulled down, it gets all bunched up down there, and it's kind of hard to deal with. So by doing this, it's going to save us time in the end.
We've got a question. Someone's asking why go up the front leg but down the back leg?
Well, I mean, frankly, this is our opening cut right here, is down around this knuckle bone, and it's kind of tough to get in here, get kind of down into the folds of the armpit, and then work out. Now, I have seen going up and out if you're hanging it by the head. Personally, I just find it to be a little bit easier point of entry down here, and you're working down here with these front shanks, whereas up here you're getting you run the risk of pulling a lot more hair into these rounds right here. These are your on the inside here on the back. That'd be your top round, bottom round, right there. So for me, I just think that it's a little bit easier going in down here, and I'm not as worried about getting a little excess hair on the shanks. Whereas I try to keep those primary muscle groups as clean as possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're more comfortable going down, you're not going to hurt anything going down either. It's just whatever you prefer.
Yeah, and there's there's that saying about 1,000 ways to skin a cat or whatever. The same thing goes with deer. Just because I do something one way, that's simply because I've done enough deer that I found that kind of works for me. But what works for me might not work for you, and just like how some people choose to hang them by the head, some people choose to hang them by the feet. There's really no right or wrong way to do it, and you'll kind of find what works for you here. So as far as pulling this hide off, it's easier the higher you can get it and get some leverage right here. This is what we're working with. So we'll see if we can't get this guy worked up. So let's try and spin it sideways here a little bit, Chris. So what you're doing, so you can see here, we've got some separation, and this is where you can use your body weight to help push that deer down. So we're going to try and get him on the count of 3 here, Chris. 1, 2.
Great job, guys. That's tricky after it's been cold for a minute.
Yeah, he's nice and cold for sure.
Yeah, definitely similar to grabbing a block of ice right now. But so we'll see how the finer cuts go, how much feeling we have left in the fingers. But and this is what we're talking about right here, where you get them down and you start to get kind of that bunching effect, especially if you can't get them super high off the ground, which we're a little bit constrained right now. And this is where hopefully we can save ourselves a little bit of time with some of these opening cuts. And so you can see, you've got some membrane in here, and you can kind of cut a little bit of that away. Some of this is your flank, and if you can save it for burger, although it's not a total end loss if you're losing a little bit of that meat in the process. I wish we could have got him a little higher.
Another question. Is the gutless method of quartering an animal in the field and packing out a legal option in Iowa?
To preface the question, which you may have been able to hear, is about the gutless method and if that's legal in Iowa with quartering deer. Now, there are a couple of things packed into that question. First, what is the gutless method? The gutless method, for those of you who don't know, is a way of taking the quarters off of a deer without entering the body cavity. So you're not actually gutting the deer. You are working around to take basically all your cuts of meat off of that deer or elk or whatever without gutting it. So that's the gutless method. Now, as to the legality, I'll preface that by saying always check the rules and regulations and call a DNR officer if you are ever in doubt or have any questions about anything. So where we left off is now we're pulling down this hide up over the head. And here again, you've got some membrane, some connective tissue, and you're just working that down. Just trying to, create separation, and you're just, using your body weight to help kind of move things along, and gravity is your friend here, as far as moving this hide away from the body. So again, now we're getting up around the front shoulders. As you can see, we're getting right here is the back of this front shoulder. And this is where these cuts up the inside are going to hopefully pay some dividends for us, because now we've got this opened up and we can continue to go down. And again, here you see, nice and seamless. It's just going to keep working for us right there. And we can continue to move this up. And here you can see if we can pull this guy up here, little Chris. You can, again, on a pressure deer, you can, just like how Chris is doing there, you can do a little pulling, go where the knife kind of leads you, and continue to work up there. All right, we'll spin it back around to the front here. And this is why I make that kind of V cut in the front, because now you can kind of continue on up the brisket right there. And so right there, we're all the way off that front leg. You can just kind of continue moving up the shoulder. And again, a sharp knife, like Chris said, can pay some dividends for you. All right, so now we've got that guy right there. We'll try and spin it around onto this side, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about bullet damage. Now, this deer here, this was a gun season. Do you know what it was shot with? 12 gauge?
20 gauge.
20 gauge. So this deer was shot with a 20 gauge slug, and as you can see, we've got a little bit of coagulation and bullet damage. Although it looks like it was a really good shot right through the ribs, right where you want it. Inevitably, you're going to have a little bit of meat loss. That's just, it's part of the game. So what you're going to do with your meat loss areas is really just trim around it. And luckily, in a situation where you have a shot like this, you're just losing a little bit of meat in and around the ribs. And on a whitetail, there's not a ton of meat on the ribs. A lot of folks will just bone them out and toss them in the burger pile. That being said, there is a great way that you can do racks of ribs on a whitetail, and I think that they are just fantastic. Steve Ranella of Meat Eater has a recipe, and I think he's got it, I know, in his cookbook, and then also online, demoed. I would highly recommend checking that out. I had previously just boned out ribs until I saw that. I gave it a shot, and it is a great method, especially if you get a deer that doesn't have a ton of tallow. Great method to kind of do something a little bit different with those whitetail ribs. So again, we've got our meat, or kind of some coagulation here. And this, you just try and clean it up the best that you can. But right here, I'm not too worried about even losing some of this, this flank right here, just because of kind of the coagulation on it, and really just the quality of the meat that you're dealing with to start. So again, we're down here. We've got our cut up the inside of the leg here down the shank, and we can bring her down like this. And we'll get this guy freed up. And again, here you got some flank meat, and this would all end up eventually in your burger pile. You can try and sort that out later. We're not doing a ton of work on it right now just because of time constraints and the fact that we're dealing with some bullet damage as well. All right, and then from here, again, we can go up the outside of the front shoulder. And you're just kind of following, you can see there it opens up pretty quickly into what's kind of indistinguishable. Then suddenly you can see the skin poking back through. So you're just following that, that skin all the way down. Yeah. All right. And then from there, we're running we're going to run up on time here, and we want to really take some time to focus on some of these cuts. From here, we're all bunched up around the neck. The neck is, you can either do a full neck roast out of it, which will require a bone saw, but it's a great cut of meat, especially if you're in a non-CWD area. That's a great way to do that neck. If not, you can just bone it out and add it to the burger pile. And there's nothing too scientific about that. So from here, we're going to start removing meat from the carcass. So like we did earlier, we talked about this joint right here on the front leg. I cut back around the joint just a little bit to make sure everything's kind of freed up. And you go from here, and you just pull and twist. And that will pop that joint. And there's that first lower leg. Do the same thing over here. Run your knife. Make sure that you're freed up. Bend it up. And get it over, and that will pop that joint. And you can do this before or after. It doesn't really matter when you're doing those skinning cuts up the inside. If you were going to do something like pull the hide off using like an ATV or a truck or something like that, which is that's a whole other story into itself. You'd want to do that first, and also if you're going from the head down. So from here, we're going to do half of this deer just for demonstration purposes. Kind of free it up a little bit more down here. But what we'll start with is this inside tenderloin. And these inside tenderloins are something that typically Chris and I will take out right away. But again, for purposes of demonstration, left them in. So they're right in here on the inside of the body cavity. And honestly, you can almost take them out dang near without a knife. But you just run. I'll start with my fingers and kind of run along the sides of them until I got a little bit freed up. And then, see there, starting to come away. And then you can just follow it up. And that right there is your inside tenderloin. You're going to have 2 of them on each side there. And that's your inside tenderloin. So now, what you want to do is probably do this side just for demo purposes. Yeah. So now we've got the front leg. And the reason I'm starting down here is because obviously we need this back leg to hang. So start down here and work up. And now the interesting thing about the front shoulder here is that this front shoulder is not attached by a joint. So you've got the back here, you've got the ball joint in the back leg. This is really just tendons and ligaments. So you can really just cut this guy away right here. And I'll try and keep as much of that flank on there as possible. And then you can just kind of work down into here.
You can see right here where it just, like Max said earlier, it's basically, it tells you where to go. You can see there's just a nice opening right there on this side. Follow it right up along the rib cage there. Got it.
And so this is freed up right here. It's just kind of connected to the hide a little bit still. But if you could see, we just freed that front leg up there, and we've got a little bit of bunching up around the neck. And to kind of help with this part where you end up getting the hide bunched up around the neck there, you can just try and get that deer as high off the ground as possible using, again, your gambrel and hoist. But there you go. That's your front shoulder. And now from here, basically what we've got is a bunch of burger.
A quick question here. You seem to be using the same knife for skinning and butchering. Can you discuss cutlery for each task?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different things that you can use. This would be more of your traditional boning knife or kind of fillet knife, something a little bit longer. This is a knife that I use for skinning and gutting, and I also use it for kind of the rougher cuts of butchering, simply because I like this knife. It's sharp, it handles well. The model and make and model it's a Benchmade Grizzly Ridge. I love my Benchmade knives. They're super sharp. But that being said, a lot of times when I get actually onto the cutting board, I'll switch over to a knife with a little bit more of a precision tip. But honestly, it's about what you feel comfortable with. Right here, this is a little bit less of the technical aspect of things. So, I like to use this knife. And again, it's all up to personal preference. I will say, I mentioned earlier a reciprocating saw or a sawzall. You can do it with a hacksaw, anything that you can go through, and that makes moving through shanks and stuff like that super, super easy. If you're doing deer in parts, you could cut right through above the pelvis there and drop the top of that deer off. Especially if you wanted to age these back two legs, you could leave them by the gambrel. Let's say that you got good aging temperatures. You go through this on on the weekend that you shoot a deer and you want to hang these back legs where your stakes are, then you can do that as well. So the long and short of it is it's just preference for cutlery. So here we've got kind of the haunch area, and you can this will all go into the burger pile. You just cut that guy down there. And there we've gotten into the ribs, and you're going to have kind of a little extra layer of meat on top of your back straps here, which I'll show you in just 1 second. And you just kind of cut some of this stuff away, and this will all get added to the burger pile, which you can kind of do whatever with, sausage, just anything that you can concoct out of burger. So there you go again, pulling that away, and all you're doing is just adding this stuff to your burger pile. And I wouldn't worry too much right now about cleaning that stuff up. It's more of a process. I like to clean it as best I can initially, which includes picking off any hair and stuff off these back legs and off any of your burger. But it's a little bit of a process. So here, where you can kind of see the outline of the back strap, and I'm going to take away a little bit more of this burger meat here for demo purposes. So at the bottom of the pelvis, or on the top of these hits here, is what you're going to start getting into, which is the back strap. So what I'll do here is cut through in towards the spine, and there you go. You've hit the spine. Then from here all the way down to the base of his neck, run 2 just big cords of steak, and that's one of the prize cuts on this deer. And so we'll kind of work on taking that apart. I'll just switch you sides, Chris. So from here, just kind of work a little bit on the inside. Here you've got the spinal cord and kind of the tops of his ribs. So you just kind of want to initially separate that a little bit with your knife. And once you get a little bit of separation here, this is again where you can kind of let gravity be your buddy. And what I mean by that is once you get kind of stuff opened up here a little bit, as you can kind of see, we've opened it up now to where we can start to follow this down. And up here on the top, you've got some silver skin and connective tissue. I will leave that stuff on all the way through the freezer. Deer fat or tallow will sour in the freezer. You want to get as much of that off of there as you can. This deer doesn't have a ton of tallow actually on him, but it's thick blocks of waxy fat. You want to get that stuff off. The silver skin, however, I view it as an extra layer of protection, like an extra saran wrap. So I'll leave that on in the freezer and then cut it off, right before I'm about to cook. It just covers up the surface area of the meat and provides you a little extra protection there. So again, going down, and here you can kind of see the seam between the back strap and the ribs, and you can basically just cut that or pull on it, and it'll kind of show you where we're going here. So again, you just kind of follow that seam, and any of this little extra tidbits of meat left on there, again, it can all go into the burger pile. Nothing goes to waste. So again, gravity is nice. Chris Ford's even better, and moving down this back strap here, and it'll get narrower and narrower as you get to the top of the deer. And there'll be a little bit left on the top just because we didn't take this guy all the way down because of time constraints. But we'll finish it off there. All right, and you're going to end up with a big slab of steak. When you skin it all the way down to the top of the head, you'll get a little bit thicker there. So it looks like we're running a little bit shorter on time. So what we're going to do is take off one of these back legs here, and hopefully be able to show you guys kind of the process with taking that apart. So here we will cut through tendon, and you see how he just falls off like that. And this is where we're going to hope that the Sawzall comes through for us real nice. This makes life a lot easier than a handsaw. So that's about the best $20 that you can spend right there. What do I do with my knife? All right. So from here, we got this back leg, and it'll be a little bit trickier now that we've got them off the gambrel, but we'll go up around the rump. So up here around the rump, and just kind of, you're just following, and this deer will kind of show you where you need to go as far as that is concerned. And now we may or may not be dealing with the ball joint here. It looks like on this guy we aren't. So there is a ball joint inside of here, and you just have to pop that ball joint and work around it on like the front. So essentially there, we get this guy cleaned up a little bit, and you want to take the time up front to work on this, cleaning up the hair and all of that stuff. But essentially, this is one half of a whitetail. We've got the back strap, the front shoulder with the shank, got the back leg here, and then the tenderloin. So we're going to see how loud we can be with the mic back there. To break down this back leg, you want to just follow the seams. And again, this is a deer will kind of show you where it wants to let you cut. And so here, you want to follow these seams and just kind of open things up a little bit. And again, this is what we were talking about earlier when sometimes you do a lot more with your hands than you do with the knife. You can just run your hands in here, especially when you break away some of this this membrane and this connective tissue, and you can start pulling apart the major muscle groups in the back of the leg. And the front leg is, again, super simple. Cut the shank, and you can do this as a whole roast. You bone it out, turn it into burger. You can do a lot of different stuff. And also with the shanks, I should mention there are a couple different ways you can do it. You can bone those out, or you can do some braised dishes. Ossobuco is a fantastic dish, and that's a great way to use up a shank. So here on the back leg, again, we're following the seams and the connective tissue. Basically on this back leg, what I would say is that you almost want to discard anything that's white. There's a gland in here, there's an artery in here, and all your meat is going to be this nice, kind of purplish red, and you want to try and discard, membrane and things like that. So here you can see we're kind of separating on the bottom of this leg, so kind of your hamstring area. These are your round roasts. And when I say roast, you can cut them into steaks or whatever you want. There's really no wrong way to do it. And so you have your top round, bottom round, and eye of round down in here. That'll look a bit better. And again, you're just kind of going where the meat's telling you. There's very clearly delineated seams in here, and you just follow those guys, and that'll really show you where to go. And don't be too worried about the different cuts. If you're like, oh, I don't, what's a top round versus a bottom round versus really, deer break down into steaks, roast, and burger. You're, at least in my experience, I cook, a top round the same way as I do a bottom round. A deer steak is a deer steak, for all intents and purposes. So again, just kind of follow in through here and just go where the meat's telling you. Here we've got that artery on the inside, and that's kind of why I say just cut out basically anything that's white, and there's that artery and that gland in there. So I'm going to take away some of this round down here. Yep. So yeah, we're almost done here. And you can freeze, and a lot of people will recommend freezing these in whole muscle groups. There's one of your rounds right there. You can freeze them in whole muscle groups. That way you're reducing surface area. I personally like to cut everything into steaks, and I'll vac seal everything just so that I can pull it right out of the freezer and onto the plate. So now here on the top of the, basically kind of the quad area, we've got your sirloin right here, and it looks like a big, basically just like a big beautiful ball of meat, to be perfectly honest. And we'll try and work this guy away here. You got right here above basically the knee, so you can cut up and around that guy right there. And then you get inside here, and you're just kind of peeling meat from bone. Let's see if I can. So again, you're just peeling meat from bone. Here we've got our bone. We've got some more round down there. And you're just kind of following her through. and just kind of, again, go where the knife is telling you to go. And then you've got your rump roast up on the top there, which would be this guy right here. Again, there's a seam right here that will separate that sirloin from that rump, and just kind of, again, follow it down.
And again, if you mess up a cut, you always will have hamburger.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about deer is that, no matter, you can, the first time I did a deer, I didn't have anyone who taught me how. I taught myself how to do butchering on a whitetail, and I did a terrible job. Frankly, I did a horrible job. I had no idea what I was doing, and it's one of those things that, there you go. I just turned out with a bunch of burger, and then I did the next deer that I shot, and I got a little bit better at it, and kind of just figured it out. And it's a continuous process, and don't be afraid really to mess up. I would say is probably the biggest thing.
And when we say you always have hamburger, I mean, you can buy a hand crank grinder fairly cheap. KitchenAid makes an attachment for their mixers.
Yep.
You don't have to spend $500 on a
No,
grinder.
I have a Weston grinder that was like $80, and that thing is a horse. But this is your sirloin right here. You can see it's like a ball of meat. You got your rump roast up here. So you want to kind of cut into there, and really all your tidbits are going to end up as burger. So we'll kind of cut that guy away there. Yep, so again, you're following the top of kind of top of the pelvis. And honestly, on whitetails, you're probably not going to get a huge rump roast off of it. A lot of times, I'll just take that guy right there, put him in the burger pile. And then down here, you're basically just going to remove the bone from this back leg.
The biggest part of the whole dissecting the back leg is just finding the seam. Like Max said, you run your finger down through there and it'll tell you where to cut.
And
you get a nice clean bone just like Max has right there.
There you go. There are your other rounds. There's the top round, bottom round, and eye of round. Now, how much of that really matters? Not really. I mean, it doesn't in terms of, there's steaks. So there's your more round. Down here, I believe that technically this is the sirloin tip, and then you'll have the shank. So again, you can follow that up, and again, just like Chris said, you find the seams, you follow them, and let your knife do the work for you. So again, following, and got her here. That. I'll trim the bottom off here. That's just part of that tendon that holds everything up. And so right there, with the shank included, again, we would saw through that and save that for ossobuco. That's the back leg of a whitetail. So again, thank you guys for working through that with us, and we look forward to getting some great questions here in the Q&A in the back end of the class. But it can be an intimidating process, especially the back leg on a whitetail. However, just because it's intimidating doesn't mean that you should not do it. Take a little time, do a little research and just don't be afraid to mess up, and you will walk away with a better, more holistic understanding of the meat, why you hunt, and how you're going to cook. So thank you guys, and we'll hopefully kick things up to Chef Chris, and he'll show you some magic in the kitchen.
Hi, my name is Chris Grebner. I'm a chef and one of the co-owners here at Walker Homestead. Our vision here, we're a farm, we're a winery, but our mission here is that we're building community through agricultural education, and classes just like this are right up that alley.
When we were planning out this class, we had discussed, I was going back and forth, and Max had the great idea that really everything's broken down, and you just experienced broken down into burger, roast, and steaks. And so I'm going to talk about those three things, starting first with the burger, because that's the easiest. And the way that I treat a venison burger, and I will say, so this is all from Max, and these are 6 ounces, and he grinds. You do the grinding, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So he grinds he grinds with bacon, which is a great. It really adds some moisture to the burger, and obviously all sorts of flavor as well. And you can probably play around with what you grind, how much you grind. Do you know how much you add?
So that's 32 pounds of venison, 5 pounds of bacon.
32 pounds of venison, 5 pounds of bacon. So that's your ratio generally.
Yeah,
so,
generally. Yeah.
And play with it. But to your burger especially, I think if you anytime you're grinding anything at home anyway, think about what you can add to it. Because ground meat, sure, it's great, but if you're going through the process of grinding something, you might as well impart flavor, right? That's your first opportunity to do that. So I've got a heavy pan here, and I'm just going to put down this first burger, and I'm going to keep this at kind of at home you would do like a low to medium, okay? This isn't necessarily a flash fry situation. I haven't cooked with venison or bacon in the venison before, so I like a nice hard crust, but in order for us to avoid drying this thing out, we're going to start with a low heat and see how that goes. We'll get a good sear on the one side, and then we'll flip it to the other. Spin this around. We fell apart on me just a little bit here. So I've put this aioli here on the... Put this aioli on both sides of the bun. I seasoned both these burgers before you guys came to me, so keep that in mind as well. Don't be shy with the salt. I was a little careful since I hadn't tried his bacon before, because obviously bacon has a fair amount of seasoning in it as well. I'm going to go here with butter lettuce.
And Chris, someone's asking, did you say that connective tissue adds flavor?
It does. Yes, it does. It also adds body to your sauces. All those connective tissues, that's what, the connective tissues, collagen, all of that kind of stuff adds body to stocks, soups, sauces, and things like that. That's what gelatin is made of. So you can, that like smooth, buttery mouthfeel, that's connective tissue. So you trim that stuff off, it's a balance of, do I want to chew this later? Or what is your dish? Are you, with this roast, we have slow cooked it for a little while, and we're shredding it, okay? It's just going to pull apart. So the connective tissue, I can kind of pick out the pieces that I don't want. But it's as opposed to if we were roasting it and slicing it for someone, I don't necessarily want someone to have to, or personally, I don't want to necessarily have to cut around or chew pieces of connective tissue. So But so like I said, if you can do it and keep it in a sauce, keep it in something where it's going to add flavor to the end dish, then that's where to do it. So does that answer the question? I hope it does.
Yes, and another question, what are those onions?
Yeah, so I did a pickle on these onions. This is just half water, half apple cider vinegar with some salt, a little bit of sugar, and it just, they've been in that. I actually vacuum sealed them in that liquid, so it just is like a quick pickle, and it takes up the moisture, but you can do this, just pour them in a thing, put this in your fridge, and a day later they've taken up that liquid, but this will last as long as you need it to last. I mean, I put pickled onions on just about everything. I'm a little obsessed. So that's our burger, guys. Very simple, very, very straightforward. Other things to use burger in, or venison burger, I would push you more towards things that are saucy, because unless you're using vegetables that are going to add liquid to that dish. So keep that in mind. Again, it's all a moisture thing.
Chris,
Yeah.
never use an instant thermometer so the burger is done.
I do. What we would have gone to right now, and yeah, this one's not going to do it. Would have been a medium. So 135 would have been a rare, and I would have pulled it then to get to a medium rare. This was probably between 130, 135 and 142, kind of in the medium range. Again, in this case with this guy, a lot of times burgers, you don't go straight. You won't go straight to the burger. You'll go straight and let it rest for a minute. With this venison, all this stuff that was all the liquid that was cooking down in the pan, and that's coming out of the meat. I want that in the bread. So I'm gonna go straight from the pan or straight from the grill onto a piece of bread so that it soaks up any of those juices and tasty bits. Because in this case, that's not just venison juice, that's also bacon renderings, and that's got flavor. So let's see, do I use an instant read thermometer with burgers? Yes. I also, whatever, people do the touchy touch on the finger, medium rare. It's use an instant read thermometer if you're concerned, or just cook it and trust yourself. I'm not concerned. In most cases, you can really tell if something's medium. Again, in this case, we've cooked it so slow that it's not really a concern. So now I'm going to move to the roast. Any other questions about the burger? We can always come back, but if there's any other questions about the burger, now's a great time. I'm going to move over to the roast, and this is where I will have your help, Max. So this is the roast. I took a piece of it off. This is about, not half, maybe a third of what was on that, and it was much bigger when it started. So what I did, and what you can do when you follow the recipes that I gave you, this is the venison cannelloni pasta dish, if you have the recipe in front of you. So with many braising dishes, what Max is going to do right now before I get out of here, I'm just going to have you show.
All right.
Yeah, you've done that before.
I have.
So move the onions. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So this practice is just, this is what, anytime you braise, use this method, okay? What we're about to talk about. So first I needed this thing to fit in a pan, and unfortunately this piece that he gave me is a beautiful piece I was looking forward to using. Didn't fit in here. So brown the meat dark, nice and dark on all sides. And you can see that's what this is here. It would be a little more gray if I hadn't done that. After I've browned the meat really, really well, without burning any bits in the bottom, I'll take the meat out, drain the fat out, if there's any fat, and I'll essentially be deglazing, even though the recipe says that I'll be deglazing with wine. I'm really deglazing with the vegetables. So you put all those vegetables in, let the moisture that's in the vegetable, which by the way, 99% of the vegetable is moisture, right? Is water. That water is not water, it's flavor. So we want that to be in this pan. And so we'll add a little salt at every stage. All the vegetables in together, stir, get all those crazy bits off the bottom, and then I'll put the wine in, reduce the wine to about half, and then I put in this dish there's juniper berries. Venison and juniper berries are best pals. It's also just a seasonal thing, right? Bay leaves, thyme if you have it, garlic cloves, help reduce that down by half, put the meat back in, and then add stock. And that cooks for, the recipe says 40 minutes. If you want to put 3 hours on that, if you want to put 4 hours on that, the longer the better. And it says a cartouche, to use a cartouche, and so I'm going to tell you what a cartouche is. Cartouche is a lid made with parchment paper. You take a piece of parchment, fold it over. This is, this big. So this is the size of a sheet tray that you would have in your house. A cookie sheet, is what my mom would call it. Fold it in half and then fold it in half again on top of itself. And then from here, I'm gonna fold it into kind of a triangle-ish, right? And then I'm gonna do that again. And just kind of again on top of itself. Okay? So I've folded it in half 2 times, no, 3 times, and then did the triangle until I'm about here. And then I guesstimate on how big I need it to be. So from the center of the pan to the outside of the pan, cut that open, and this is a cartouche. So this is used instead of a lid, so that fits nicely in there. Instead of a lid, because it allows moisture to cook away, concentrates heat, and because moisture is cooking away, we're concentrating the flavor. So this is important in all sorts of sauce making, but stocks, braises like this. So, and then at the end of all of this process, we've taken the meat out, let it rest for a little while. Max shredded it, and I don't know if you guys can see this at all, but this is like, if I'm serving this here to a guest, I might press this through a food mill or just sieve it off through a fine sieve. This has amazing body to it, like it's thick, it's almost like a ragu. So, I'm salivating, sorry about that. So that is, we've gotten this far, right? Now, Max, could you just, those are pieces of pasta.
Yep.
When they float to the top, take them out.
Yep.
Go ahead and add them to that water. Sure. We're cooking the pasta. The pasta recipe is there. You can go right back over here.
Okay.
Pasta recipe is there. It takes too long for me to demo how to make pasta. So if you don't want to go through the trouble of making this pasta, egg noodles. Just go get some egg noodles. This whole dish, just like this, with the chunky veg and the sauce and the egg noodles, just put it all in here. Perfect. Take all the steps of doing the pasta out, and this is that done dish. So consider that. He's cooking the pasta. I'm gonna get some mushrooms going. These are trumpet mushrooms. I'm just gonna brown a few for this dish. butter's already in here. So I've already, you kind of cook the butter until it's done foaming. It kind of gets some of that excess moisture out of the butter. And then we're dealing just with the fat. And turn this up a little bit. I'm gonna get another pan going for our greens. Are there any questions? All right. Yep, there's just butter in here. I don't remember what I said in the recipe. I might have said oil. But if I said oil, I didn't know what I was thinking, because butter and mushrooms are best friends. Let's see here. Oh yeah, the parm sauce. So, yeah. Soaking venison in milk. So I don't have experience soaking venison in milk, but I do have experience soaking things in milk. And the thought behind that, to my knowledge, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is pulling out impurities. And I've heard that if you are going to do that, because I'll do that with livers, and I'll typically use buttermilk because the acidity in that helps take some of that out as well. But
I typically, if I am going to use milk on venison, like Chris said, it's with a liver recipe. If I'm making liver and onions or something like that, your primary cuts, everything that we've demoed today, you absolutely do not need any milk for. And to a point there that I kind of want to make is the reason people might have heard that is to get rid of the gamey flavor. And I think that that's a bit of a misnomer, because venison tastes like what it is, right? Venison is not pork, it's not beef, it's venison. So when people say it has a gamey flavor, it just tastes like what it is. And I would say to help reduce some of that gaminess, air quotes, is like what Chris said earlier, do not overcook it. Low and slow, and I think the worst thing you can do with wild game, venison or otherwise, is to overcook it. So I would just say follow those steps, and you really don't need the added preparation of something like milk.
yeah, and typically, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, as far as the gamey flavor, and just how I treat venison in general, what I like to tell people that have questions about cooking venison is that I treat it as a grass-fed product. Okay, I mean they're foragers as well, but and they're opportunists, but just like you would use or maybe treat a grass-fed piece of beef a little bit differently, I would take some of the same things into account. Do you have another question?
Yes.
Great.
Did you use the mushrooms or something?
I did not. You could. I like to season them at the end. So right now, I don't like to pull out any, because of the way this dish is ending. Again, this is like a one thing to consider here is that, so especially with mushrooms, right? All that liquid that's in the mushroom, they're arguably 100% moisture. That's the flavor. So I guess depending on the dish, if there's any liquid that comes out, I don't want that to necessarily burn away. So I want to cook it in a way where that moisture stays in this pan so that I can put it on the plate. And so seasoning it now before I'm ready to put it on a plate, that moisture comes out. That salt encourages the moisture to come out, and then and then the flavor of the mushroom is on the surface of the mushroom as opposed to in the pan. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's all about, cooking is all about salt and water. That's all it is. So this is the roux for the Parmesan sauce. I've done the butter. The butter did the same thing, foamed up, and we were just dealing with the fat. Put the whisked in the flour, and now it'd be nice if you're adding warm cream to this as opposed to cold, but you can do either. This cream and milk that is in here. And I'm gonna be about a medium-high heat right now. And before you add your liquid, make sure that you're cooking your flour. Otherwise, this sauce will taste like flour. Okay, you have to really cook it to cook that flavor out of there. And this is the exact amount that the recipe called for, but I like to kind of eyeball it. As I add it, each time I'm whisking, it thickens up. So I want to kind of control, even though this is what I said in the recipe. I always still like to do it by the eye. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna go right about there. I'm gonna let this bubble up so that you can see it here. I think what I'll end up doing here, and Rachel, you can tell me what you think, Max, tell me what you think. Instead of going through all of the steps, I'll walk through the steak dish, and I'll do the steak, I'll demo the steak, but I won't cook all of those other pieces, because that's really baseline stuff. Okay. Great. Awesome. Do you want a dark or light roux? That's the better question. I like a medium roux. So the person is referring, a dark or a light roux is how dark you're cooking the flour. A light, there's kind of and it's literally dark or light. It goes from a lighter tan color is when it's really cooked well, and then a medium to dark roux, which would be a very dark brown, just before burning that flour. All right. So, not so sure you guys can see this. I'm going to try. But this is kind of like a nice thick sauce, right? It's a thick sauce. A little thin, but I want it to be a little thin because we're adding this beautiful Parmesan to it. So we'll keep it a little bit thin. In fact, I might, in the end, put the rest of this in to thin it back out. I'll do that right now. So a medium roux, add the cream. Like I said, I like to eyeball it. Once the roux is, or once you've got a nice thickness to it, add your Parmesan. I've not added any salt at this point because Parmesan is salty enough. After we taste it, wow, I almost grabbed the salt and dumped it in. Let's see there. All right, I like that. So I didn't quite use all of it. Maybe your measuring skills are better than mine. And I'll just show you the viscosity of this. So this is like a nice, slow moving sauce. Tasty, tasty, right? Just a basic bechamel almost, you know, with Parmesan. All right, we'll put that to the side. Now, we've got our pasta. Where am I at? Pasta. All right, we'll finish building this and then we'll move on to the next dish. Can you grab that plate for me? Oh, greens, that's what I need. And I'll take that pan on the top.
So?
Yep, thank you. Yep. All right. I'm just gonna wilt these greens. These are, this is kale. What a mess I have here, huh? So I'm gonna get not a screaming hot pan, but I do want it hot enough that if I were to throw a piece of water, a little bit of water in here, that would just go away. Okay. All right. So that's going to go in. If you got a little bit of fat, a little bit of oil would be good here. I'll even sometimes throw just like a tablespoon or less of water to encourage some steaming. And I'm going to season these guys. Always season your leaves, whether you're cooking them or you're making a salad. Leaves have flavor. All right, what am I thinking about here? Mushrooms, pasta, plate. All right. Okay, so I've just got these to a nice deep dark green, okay? They're gonna cook a little bit further in the pan. Okay, we're gonna plate this bad boy up. You're so patient.
I think when you did the sauce drizzle, I started to sweat.
Oh, yeah. The sauce sweats.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so these are sheets of pasta. Salt. This is kosher salt. It's always good to have a good fine sea salt in your kitchen. But I use Malden salt as well. So, all right, so what I'm doing, you see that, I don't know if you can see it, but the shredded meat, you can get this out of here. The shredded meat, it shred pretty well, right?
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't too much effort.
No.
What I would do if you were making this exact dish, as opposed to doing the egg noodles, is take the meat that you want in the cannelloni. Cannelloni is dessert. We don't want a venison dessert. Onto a fork like this, and I'm gonna zhuzh it in this tasty, tasty goodness in here, right? And then I'm gonna, like a taco, fill this beautiful thing up. Ignore my broken finger. That's appetizing, right? All right. Okay, about that much. I mean, you play with it however much you want to put in there. That's all I'm gonna put inside of here. If I had some more shaved parm, I would shave some Parmesan on here, right here. And I'm gonna fold this over. Right there. Okay. That's a good, tasty goodness. And to keep this warm, what you could do is put these in on a sheet tray, build them up like this in a sheet tray, or if you could build this in a pan, in like a cake pan, like a 9x13 pan, with the sides on it. Build them up and then throw the sauce and the cheese on it, almost like an enchilada. But that's how these are typically done anyhow. So we have that. I'm going to put a little bit of the sauce down. Yep. For sure. Could you grab that cast iron pan?
Yep.
All right.
You want it on that far burner?
This guy right here, yep. I'm gonna demo just the steak and how to sear the steak. I want to put all this on here. I really want to put all this on here, but I'm not gonna.
Do you want me to replace this with?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Our kale. Oh, you just took it. Sorry.
Oh.
Kale. down. I feel like I'm missing something. Maybe it's just more Parmesan. I really want Parmesan on this. So this is the dish, guys. Maybe I would take a little bit of this stuff. You don't want this stuff to go to waste, okay? All this time this thing spent in there, don't let it go to waste. I don't specifically like these cooked through chunks myself. I'll incorporate them into the sauce, but I don't like to eat those whole on a plate. And they don't necessarily present as well. So this is the pasta dish. We're gonna blaze through into the steak dish.
Really quickly, see a shot of that pasta dish, because I'm sure it looks really beautiful.
Sorry. All right. Steak. Here it is. A couple of pointers really quick, you guys. So first off, this steak has been pulled. It's still cold to the touch, but ideally it's not cold to the touch. Ideally it's at room temperature. Pull your steaks out to room temperature. Doesn't take that long. Just be really patient with it. These, go ahead.
And this steak that Chris is working with is actually a back strap. And now and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, I cook the steaks that I will pull out of that back leg the same that I cook as a back strap, generally speaking, as far as temperature and things like that go.
Yep. So, and as far as getting the silver skin off of this, what I like to do is I'll get my knife, I'll put the cut down, and I'll get my knife underneath between this, so the silver skin is down on the board, and I'll get my knife on top of the silver skin, and with a nice long knife, hopefully it's a boning knife or a carving knife even, in one swoop, I'll pull and get that silver skin off, so that you have this flat presentation. It's flat all around, as opposed to nick. Again, not a big deal, but you know, if you're gonna take the time to hack it away, especially if you can do it in one pull, it saves some time and it's really easy to do. So.
And again, that silver skin you can leave that on there going into the freezer. It acts as kind of its own natural saran, which will prevent any freezer burn, although most methods, whether it's saran and freezer paper or back sealing, will work on that as well. So yeah, just like Chris said, kind of put it in there and you can just slide it right off.
Space here. Okay, great. So we've got a smoking pan. These are nice heavy pans, so I'm not worried about making sure there's enough fat in there. Because this heavy pan and the seasoning that's on it is going to allow that protein to just lift right off. So, and I'm just in the pan. You could put some fat in the pan as well. It'll help on like an aluminum pan. That would be really helpful. Again, just be patient with it. While that's cooking, one thing that I do want to show you is people don't know how to cut carrots or cut any cylindrical vegetable. So this is a parsnip, and what I did for the mash that's in the recipe is I'll go at an angle. I want something that's going to fit on the fork with maybe a couple other things. Okay, so I'm not going to go rounds. Like this is for the puree. This is going to get mashed up. But if I'm presenting something, I want it to look nice and I want it to fit on the fork. So I'll make this cut, and then this is called a roll cut. I'll roll it a quarter of a turn to me, and I'll cut again. Quarter of a turn, cut again. Quarter turn. And as I get up, and the parsnip is a great example because compared to most carrots, this thing gets really thick at the top. So I have to adjust how I cut because the thickness is the amount of time that I have to cook it, right? We want everything to cook evenly at the same time. So I'm still quarter turn, but now I'm just adjusting. It's less of an angle and it's more straight on. Still getting these little pieces And then in a parsnip especially, I'm actually not even going all the way to the middle because this center is incredibly woody. It doesn't have a lot of good flavor to give us. So that is the roll cut, and this is for our compost and our bunnies and sheep and everyone else here on the farm.
And I think something that's important, and Chris can probably touch to this, and something people may be wondering is internal temperatures on your venison. And I know that this has come up a number of times, and maybe the place where it's easiest to see your results is on a steak. I personally strive for like that 129 to 131 range, and Chris, I don't know if you do things differently, but I think that overcooking, if it's going to be seen in the worst light on any cut, is on a steak. That's where you can do the most damage if you're overcooking that cut of venison. I personally use a sous vide a lot for my venison steaks. I will hold that again between 129 and 131 degrees before I then take it out and put it on a pan. I'm sure Chris can editorialize on that. Maybe even tell me that I'm doing it all wrong.
No,
but it turns out pretty well, and so I think that that's something really important.
Yeah. So what I'm doing here is I've got a bunch of butter, herbs. This is thyme, some juniper berries, bay leaf. Now that I've flipped it over, we've got this nice crust on here. I'm going to use this butter to baste, and so I'm going to add a little bit more butter, and we're going to allow this to crisp up really nicely. We're running out of time, so are there any other questions that you guys have regarding maybe the sear of a loin or anything else, or do we want to go right into the question and answer? That'd be great. Sous vide, it's a French, just meaning under vacuum, and it's a common practice in restaurants. In fact, to cook things, meat in general, or especially, because you can cook it to a specific temperature using a water bath. Other than that, and doing it sous vide, you get it to like maybe rare, or exactly where you want it, and then you just have a screaming hot pan and you flash it in the pan. It's definitely the way to go. So essentially finishing these guys, I'm not going to flip them again. There's really no reason to, unless I feel like this side is getting too done. But I would just keep basting this until they're at the doneness that I want. And then how I would have served this dish is we would have been slicing this piece in half, so each person would have two beautiful pieces. You can open it up with the uncooked or the more medium rare side facing up. It just presents beautifully. This was going to be with a parsnip mash and the roots as well. So do try that. And the red wine sauce as well, which is super simple. I mean, really, this dish of the three dishes is the least complicated. Be patient with your steak, and I don't know. I mean, the rest is just cooking vegetables. So, yeah. Absolutely, yes. Let it rest. So I'd sear this, and once I feel like I'm almost there, maybe like 5 to 10 degrees away, I'd pull it off and put it, maybe on a cookie sheet with a rack, so it doesn't sit around in its juices and make a mess. Or just put it on a cutting board. Doesn't matter. But yes, let it rest. 5 to 10 minutes.
I tasted beer for the second time in my life, and for the first time, made. So, I don't know if that's the taste of the beer or compliments to the chef, but now I want to try this alone to see what the meat tastes like. So,
Yeah. Finally, I wanted to thank the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. They've been an incredible help to me in Edible Outdoors, help with funding and help with registration, and they've just done so much, and so I appreciate them a lot, as well as all of the instructors and the tech folks who are involved in this class. Thank you, thank you. And to Walker Homestead for graciously hosting us today in their beautiful space.